Hi, everybody. You are listening to Judging Meghan with your host, Meghan Judge. I'm just going to start with this. I always like to start it light, Deborah, because we talk about such serious topics. I have been watching Love Story, the JFK. I don't know if you've been watching it too, but what I don't like about it is the depiction of, I've talked about this on a past episode, Daryl Hannah, and she wrote a letter to the editor, and it was so unfair to her. But when I was young, I was so sad by the real story of really what happened. So a lot of times celebrities are depicted in certain ways, and I just find it's unfortunate the way the story has kind of panned out. To show somebody depicted in a bad light is never good, in my opinion. But what I do love is the celebration of fashion and how beautiful I thought Carolyn Bessette Kennedy was. I wish they would have focused more on her relationship with her sister. If you've read some of the books I've read about them in particular, I just loved them. And so I am wearing a little tortoise headband because I don't know if you remember, she really brought these in. So they're coming back again. So I'm going to say that. And I am just going to introduce my beautiful guest today. Deborah Santana is an author. I'm going to put my glasses on too because I'm super vain. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you know I hate that I have to wear the glasses now, but I do. Deborah Santana is an author, activist, and business leader dedicated to peace, justice, and women's empowerment. You came to the right place, by the way, because that's what I'm about too. Her new book, Loving the Fire, Choosing Me, Finding Freedom, is out now in all major platforms. Welcome to the podcast, Deborah.
Thank you so much, Megan. It's a joy to be here with you.
So I'm just going to start with, I want to find out about you. Can we talk about where you're from and just a little bit? I always ask people, tell me about where you grew up and a little bit about your early life.
I was born in San Francisco, California. I'm very, very honored to have chosen that place for my birth site. And I just I've always lived in California. I also was bicoastal for a while and lived in New York as well as California. But I was just so fortunate. I was born at a time when civil rights were still a huge issue, as they are today. Nothing's
Mm-hmm.
changed, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up in a biracial family, my dad Black, my mom white. And we just had a loving home. The world was a little bit treacherous, but in our home, we were safe and loved. And that's what I remember. My sister and I have such fond memories of sitting together as a family, my crazy aunts coming out from Chicago and all over to visit, and going to church on Sundays and having my dad play the guitar in the living room every day. We just had a really uplifting childhood.
And I would assume just the music. We're a big music family too. My daughter's a singer. I was a singer. I grew up around music and that kind of stuff too. I think it makes a family, just being able to be together and play the guitar or whatever. It's just so special. I loved that part of my childhood too. I'm also a California girl. So not by birth, but it's just the most, I'm sorry, but we live in the best state ever, don't we?
Well, I love a lot of places, but
Uh-huh.
I really feel so connected to this state. And I have traveled a lot of it, and I've traveled a lot of the country and the world. And I think there are other places I could have lived, but because I was born here, it's just as if my roots really came up through me and spread. And I love a lot of places, though.
Yeah, it's I'm sure you've been everywhere. So tell me, your new memoir is titled Loving the Fire. What does this mean to you?
I chose the title because I feel that when any of us goes through tremendous life change, I
Mhm.
equate it to running through fire. And that's how I felt. And I don't know if you've ever been beside a forest fire, but I have. When I was driving my daughter to volleyball, we would come down sometimes through back from Reno to the Bay Area. And one time there was a forest fire and there were flames on both sides of the car. And I'll never forget what that looked like. And when I was going through my own huge transition, I felt as though I was running through fire, and I needed to believe that I was going to get through to the other side, not unscathed, but I would get through to the other side. And then, as in a forest fire, when the fire goes out, there are new shoots, new life, new roots that come up, green leaves start blooming on trees again. So that's what I equate loving the fire with. I love to be transformed. I love to be changed by life circumstances for the better.
I can't imagine what it would have been like to drive through a forest fire. I mean, I hate to bring in Malibu and all, but I live in
Yes.
Manhattan Beach, California.
Mhm.
And, you know, I have many friends, as I'm sure you know, people that lost their homes in these fires
Mhm.
that we had in the past year. And I remember watching on the news the families as they were leaving, not those particular fires, but there was a Malibu fire and just the desperation of getting out. But I love how you talk about that it's almost like you can get through anything. In your head, it's that scary feeling of
Mhm.
desperation that I can't even imagine what that's like
Mhm.
driving through
Yes.
that.
Yes. And
Terrifying.
I think also everything, if we stay in the moment, it's okay to be terrified.
Yeah.
It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to fear for your life. And a lot of people, some people in that situation lost their lives.
Hmm.
And loss is so painful. And yet, if we have our spirit, we can never lose everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think
That's
that's the
really,
most important part,
yeah.
especially as women and for what you've been through in your life. You talk about your father being a famous musician and, you know, kind of growing up with music and tell me about what that's like. I know I'll briefly touch on the fact that you were married, also married to a musician, Carlos Santana. Can you tell me, because you work so much with women and women's empowerment, what that was like and where you found your place in the circle of power?
Well, for me, of course, my mother, who grew up with my father as a famous musician, taught my sister and me that there's nothing to value in a person just because they're famous. The
Mm-hmm.
value of a person is who they are inside, their integrity, their empathy, their love for humanity. So I was raised to know that just because someone is famous does not mean that they're special or more special than you and me. So I didn't go into when I was growing up, my father never let us go to a nightclub to hear him perform. He didn't want us around that atmosphere. So I only heard my father play at home and in church, or if he was on TV. So when I married, of course, I had that same sensibility. I was in love, so that's what made it special for me. But I also knew that fame is fleeting
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes, and fame is not the measure of a person.
Yeah. I mean, I think that what you find in life is people have everything. Celebrities have everything. It's like living in a fishbowl, right? But at the end of the day, we're all just people. You know, it matters how you treat people. When at the end of your life, you can't take it with you, right? So I
Absolutely.
think the most important thing is who you are as a person. You touched on the point of growing up with your parents in an interracial marriage at, you know, during that time where people were still, I mean, unfortunately we're living in it yet again, which don't get me started. I'm trying really hard to just power through. I will tell my listeners this. I was at the march this weekend and I cried. I cried and cried.
Absolutely.
It was a pretty amazing day. But aside from that, where did you learn your resilience growing up the way that you did? And in San Francisco, it's more of a cultural town with a lot of music. And it's a little different than if you were to grow up in like the South or something like that. But tell
Yes.
me about what you learned from that.
Well, I had my ancestors' stories, which I do tell in Loving the Fire. The story about my grandmother being shot in the stomach while they were worshiping in church because they were still in Louisiana. And the white ranchers didn't like the music that they were performing and singing, not performing, but singing in their worship. And so they just shot through the window and shot my grandmother in the stomach. And so I heard all the stories. They had such great faith. They had all these stories. I don't know if they were myth or true, but, the person who was given snake venom, but because they were worshiping God, it didn't kill them. We had all these stories of resilience in our family. And my mom and her darling little Irish English family, they were original farm workers here in California. Her dad and mom put the five girls in the car, and in the summer they would go pick cotton and fruit. And both of my parents had difficult lives, not in the sense of being in the South, but they worked hard and they went through life learning that they had to be strong and they had to have a very strong backbone. I always, whenever I think of my father and my mother, I sit up straighter. That's the kind of people they were.
Let me ask you, because we touched on being married and following in the footsteps of your mom married a musician, then you ended up marrying a musician. You were married for a very long time, 34 years. That's a long time. I just celebrated my 25th of dating.
Congratulations.
Of dating. We've been married 17, but I feel like I have to get credit for those other years too. And it's hard. I mean, it's important though, as women, that you find your own identity. Specifically, you were married to somebody pretty famous. Tell me what it was like leaving the marriage and finding out who you were on your own without your dad, without being somebody else's plus one, if you will.
I've had a very independent life. My mother was extremely independent. She was a feminist before the word feminist was really spoken in every circle.
Mm-hmm.
And she and my dad were equals in many, many ways. And so in my marriage, first of all, I was on my own a lot of the time because Carlos traveled so much. And in those times of being on my own, I had a whole life. I had girlfriends, I had Bible studies, I had singing groups, I had prayer groups, I had book groups. I traveled and did seminars. When my children were born, 10 years after we were married, then I took them with me when I went places. But I had a very independent existence. And my children, actually, we would sit down and have committee meetings, the children and me, like, this is how we're going to do this. This is what happened at school today. Let's discuss it. And he wasn't really involved in those day-to-day things. So my independence never left me. I clung to having a marriage and a relationship because I wanted to have that closeness, but I didn't need that closeness to be a full person.
Can you tell me a little bit about once you've worked on finding your own identity, taking over as you were on your own much of the time? How did you find yourself and that spiritual component that you talk about in the book?
I always had a spiritual existence and a strong belief. When I grew up, it was in Christianity. My paternal grandparents had started a church in Oakland, so we had went to that Pentecostal church and also went to a Lutheran church. And then when I was at high school, as you can imagine, in San Francisco, I started doing yoga. We had gurus coming, and I started meditating. And then Carlos and I had a guru for about 10 years. So my meditation practice just kept deepening and deepening. So my attunement to my inner being, which is what I really believe is the strength of life, is being able to hear that voice inside of you that comes from a divine existence. I always had that, and I've always sought to deepen that, and I've changed. That's why I went from Christianity to unity, which is a metaphysical Christianity, to meditating, to then coming back to the church. I just keep seeking and seeking. So that is really my foundation. And in any transition, I am at my altar every morning rain or shine, travel or not travel, tapping into the message for me of that day. And I read Daily Word every morning, which is from Unity, which is a metaphysical message for the day. Today's was divine order, which I truly try to believe is happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I just keep plodding along on my path. And when changes come, or when I want to make a change, I, of course, pray for guidance. And then I listen for my own intuitive voice.
I think that I'm also very spiritual, more so than anything else. I grew up in an organized religion, Catholic. I think that it grounds you.
Mhm,
Every night when I hit the pillow, I like to talk to God. I like to just say thank you
mhm,
for to be able to be here through these trying times. You know,
mhm,
we're all dealing with really hard things right now, specifically all over the world, but in our country
mhm.
too. And I think if we have that spirituality to lean on, it really helps with everything else. So I always say how grateful I am every single day to be able to be here and thank God for what we have and where we are. I want to find out about why you decided to you have 5 documentaries under your belt, which is pretty amazing. Were you always into filmmaking, or is this something that you found when you really found yourself and started to make it on your own, which I think is so inspiring for women that specifically leaving marriages and, finding their identity?
Well, I actually met the director that I made 4 of the 5 documentaries with when I was at Natalie Goldberg's writing retreat in Taos one year. And she and I became close friends. And she actually is a documentarian. And Barbara Rick and I just hit it off. We just loved writing together. And then when our family went to South Africa for Archbishop Tutu's 75th birthday, I asked Barbara to come and her husband, Jim Anderson, to come and film the trip when we went with Artists for New South Africa, because I knew it was a once in a lifetime experience. So that was the first short documentary I made, which was called Road to Ingwavuma. And it was about our contingent's travel to South Africa and meeting Nelson Mandela, sitting at his feet, and traveling to Robben Island. So then I went to New York and I edited with her. And that's when I caught the bug, because I really love editing. And so we edited the film together. And then I asked her to travel to Kenya with me a few years later when I visited the Daraja Academy, a school I support, a free boarding school for girls in Nanyuki, Kenya. And she made that documentary with me. So I was really the executive producer and she was the director, but I got to participate in all of the editing. And she and I are both very hard-headed, so we we fought for what we wanted in the final cuts. But that's how I always say I'm an accidental documentary filmmaker.
I find that amazing that you were able to do that. And also, editing is not easy. So, and to love editing is very tedious, don't you think? But it's
Yes, so she
something
had
that,
an yeah, she had an
yeah,
expert editor, and then she and I were just standing there going, this, that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You're a little bit of a perfectionist, huh?
I am.
Yeah. I think that's great, though. I think that's what gives women power is being, that's something that I think we all should be proud of when we want something to be perfect and we're turning out any kind of film or art or, in my case, a
Yeah.
podcast. So,
Yes, and I think in the beginning, though, when I was managing Santana when I was younger, and I
mhm.
managed for 13 years before the divorce, and I was very intimidated by the music industry and some of the CEOs and the people that I interacted with. I didn't have my voice yet in business in that arena.
Mhm.
I always had my voice in my art or in my writing. I knew what felt like it was right or what should be on the page and the editing of the films. But I grew into being confident in myself in the corporate environment because I didn't go to school. I didn't have an MBA. I didn't go to school for that. So, but that's okay. I grew into that also.
Well, I find it fascinating that you're so striking and so powerful and so impressive in everything you've done on your own that it really inspires other women that might be in these situations where they're always in the background, being married to a musician, growing up with fame, to be able to take their power back. I'm so inspired by the fact that you've done so much. You're also on the board of, can you remind me which museum it is? I don't want to butcher this. I'm sorry.
Yes. No, because I was first on the national board of the Smithsonian Institution, and now I'm on the advisory council for the National Museum of African American History and Culture, which is part of the Smithsonian. And I was a founding donor there. I really believe in that museum. Yeah. So, but I'm also still learning. I mean, I sit on these boards and I listen to the experts who run the boards and are so, especially in the museum world. So that's a new world for me too. I mean, not new
Hmm.
now. I've been involved with the Smithsonian since 2014, but I continue to learn and grow. And I'm just so grateful that I get all these opportunities. And that's my message to women, really. You know, choose yourself, find your freedom, and then do what you love and get better at it. Do research, take a class. I mean, I had a vegetarian restaurant when I was 22, and then I took a course in restaurant management while I had the restaurant open. So I don't always do things in the correct sequence, but I'm not going to be in anything that I don't learn.
And also, I like to say this too. It's never too late, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, you're saying you're new to doing this, you're new to doing that. I tell my listeners all the time, I've had 3 careers, but
Mhm.
one of my favorite career is being a mom. And I know you're a mom too. So I would love to know about balancing it all out. You've done so much in your life. That's amazing. Most people would be blown away by all the things that you've done, but your proudest job, I would assume, and I'm not trying to speak for you, is being a parent. So tell me about that.
Yes. Being a mother really gave me so much more love. I'm a love person, and I really couldn't believe the love that these little beings bring into your lives. And of course, it's challenging. I was 32 when my first was born. So I not really known what it was going to be like, but I was so close to my mom and dad, and they were there all the time. I didn't do anything alone. My sister was the best aunt in the whole world. She didn't have her own kids, so she totally was available for me. And I just was able to get help. So when went back to work at Santana or started working, I found this amazing young woman who came and helped me take the kids to school. The 3 kids ended up going to 3 different schools. And, you remember how much hard work it is. But my mom volunteered in their classrooms when they were in elementary school. I mean, we had a family, an extended family that helped me raise my children. And my kids are so much better for it. They are so close to my sister and so close to people that would help us. So I've been so fortunate. I didn't do anything on my own, but I reveled in those days with the kids. I mean, I do that with my grandkids now. I overdo sometimes.
How many grandkids do you have?
I have 2 grandsons and a granddaughter on her way. She'll be here by the end of April.
Well, congratulations. I had my kids, I have 2 girls, and I had my kids in my 30s too. And I'm grateful for that
Hmm.
because I don't think I was ready. I mean, I definitely know I was not ready in my 20s. I had a lot of growing up to do.
Hmm.
And now that I'm a mother, I kind of think, I hope my daughters wait till they're ready to have kids, because I think you really start to, at least for me, I started to really know who I was in my 30s and
Hmm.
learn more. Where in my 20s, I was just still such a kid. So I
Yeah,
love that. I love that. I tell women that all the time. I think that's important.
it is. Both of so to my older 2 are the ones with the kids, and they waited until they were in their 30s. And my younger, who's in her 30s, is a dog mother, which I think is perfect for her. And
Yeah.
so I mean, they are wonderful people. And I think when we're fortunate, I don't know if it's karma. I don't know. Some people are very sure of what things are when they transpire in their lives. I'm just so grateful that I love my children and that we have such great relationships. And we had so much fun when they were growing up. I mean, the teenage years were tough, especially with my middle. She would just, I said, you just need to become an attorney. She would just try to batter me until I would give in to what she wanted. And I said, oh my God, these negotiating skills need to be used in a positive way. Please go be an attorney. But all of everything that we go through, if we understand that it's our lesson, then we can deal with it.
You do so much to work with women, especially specifically marginalized women. Is that just your passion? Is it something that you feel in life you have a calling? You talk a lot about spirituality. Tell me a little bit about that.
It is my calling to level the playing field. I think
Mhm.
because of my upbringing in the church and in service to humanity, even as a young person, um, and then seeing that people did not have opportunities. I mean, you just did not have an opportunity if you're a person of color. You did not have the same opportunities if you were an immigrant. You didn't have the same opportunities as the dominant culture. And so I've always fought to level the playing field. I do not believe that there should be any designation of negativity because someone does not have white skin.
I
And
agree.
yeah, and so I fight for that all the time. I mean, that was the whole point of Artists for New South Africa. We were a bunch of artists and activists from America who were fighting against apartheid. And that was a system not dissimilar to the system that America's trying to have now,
Mm.
where you had a pass card. You had to have all these things if you were of color, or you could not be out. It's so similar to what's going on now. So those the freedom to be a human being because you were born in this body as a human, that to me is your right. So yes, that is my passion. You can hear it.
I mean, it breaks my heart because as somebody that's already been through this like yourself once, when I was walking around the protests over the weekend and there was a couple there and I'm one of those people I cry over a commercial. I just do. I'm very emotional. And they had to have been, I would say they were like 80 and one was on a cane, one in a wheelchair,
Mhm.
waving the flag. And I started talking to them because I'm the queen of I will talk to anyone. And I just felt, I said to them, oh, thank you so much for coming out and doing this. And they said, yeah, we've already been through this once. We never thought we would be through it again.
Mhm.
And so I think that someone like you is so important and needed in these times because you have to use your voice, which you're doing, to remind people that we can't be here again. And I talk a lot on the podcast about white, like myself having white privilege. And it's a privilege, but it's also something that if you carry that privilege, you use it wisely, which
Mhm.
means helping other people that might not be able to have racial discrimination and are marginalized. So I
Mhm.
think what you're doing is so important. And I honestly thank you for that, Deborah, because I think it's got to be really hard and emotional right now with what's going on in the world.
Well, I thank you for being an ally because that is what's needed. I was so moved by the George Floyd protests
Mm.
because there were 27 million people around the world who protested that killing. And I'm so moved now. I mean, I have chills just talking about it. I'm so moved by the protests now. I mean, I'm so moved by Minneapolis. I'm so
Mm.
moved that people are standing up because in reality, I don't want to look at only what's wrong and the horrible things. I want to look at the people who are standing up and loving. And that gives me such joy and hope. And you're an ally, and we need you.
But don't you think too, thank you for saying that, but don't you think too, because it's hard. We talked about the spiritual component, and at the end of the day, I'm trying to limit my news because it's
Hmm.
so upsetting, and
Hmm.
I already am diagnosed with complex PTSD, and
Hmm.
I struggle with depression and anxiety. And
Hmm.
so I'm trying really hard to look to people like you or remain positive for my listeners that really are feel like a lot of losing hope by the day, that out of all of this stuff, this pendulum will swing back. I believe
Hmm.
that. And look to the good. Look to you talk about the book, and in closing, I'm kind of going to bring this in because you talk about walking through the fire. And I
Hmm.
hate to use your book and what you do, but that's what I think when I think about your book is what as Americans specifically, everyone in the world is dealing with really hard things right now, but we are walking through the fire. So I thank you for your book and what you're putting out there because there's so many people that are looking for hope, and that's what you're bringing. So I thank you for that. Can you talk about why that's such a the title is such an important piece of who you are and why this book is so important to you?
Well, I have had so many amazing life experiences, and I've also had a lot of trauma. And yet, my personality just leans toward the positive, not toxic positivity. I'm not going to be that, but I am going to always try to find a nugget of light in whatever I'm going through. And because I've done that, I have the experience that shows me the more I transcend the negative, the further away it gets. And I've had some very, very painful things that I went through with my children. They've had some really hard experiences. And my mother always said, "You kids keep me on my knees." And some experiences have really kept me just, the only hope was spirit. So I can't speak for anyone else because it's such a balance between rage and faith. I mean, I'm not going to lie. There is rage in me as well as faith. I
Mhm.
am not a Pollyanna person, but I do hold on to light, and I do hold on to what you said. The pendulum has got to swing back. I mean, all these buildings that are being changed, laws that are being changed, indigenous
Dollar bills,
knowledge.
dollar bills,
Yeah, but
dollar bills
indigenous
being set. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
placement. People have put up plaques around the United States of the founders of this country, which really are the indigenous people. And now
Yeah.
they've been taken away. Well, we're just going to have to redo it. It's just going to be double work for us.
And we can. And that's like what
Yes.
I take out of it. Yesterday, um, I'm going to tell you this quickly in closing, and then I'm going to prepare you for your biggest takeaway from your book and where people can find it. But I want my listeners to know this. My friend and I that were marching yesterday. Wait, it was yesterday. It was yesterday. I'm sorry. I'm losing track of time. That's what kind of day I've had. Um, but it was such a happy moment. There was a bus driver driving by and all the cars were honking. And I've been to every single protest. I went to the first No Kings. My listeners know I organized South Bay Takes a Stand. So I'm very, very involved in what's going on. And I've seen the haters, the people driving by in trucks giving us the middle finger. I've seen it all, as I'm sure you're aware, because you've seen a lot in your life. And it's painful and it makes me angry. But yesterday, what gave me hope was everybody was honking and everyone was fired up. 9 million people were protesting this weekend. And this woman driving a bus started honking the bus. And everyone on the bus stood up and was like, you know, waving to us and happy. And
Mhm.
that is what it's about, I think.
Mhm.
Maybe I think that we had to go through this in the country to maybe come back together and bring the good. There's always going to be bad, as you know,
Absolutely.
but bring the good together and the people that need to support each other. And that's what we really need. The biggest takeaway from the book, I would love to know for my listeners.
Thank you. Well, I have something at the end of my book, which is called How to Walk Through Fire. and it's 2 pages of how I did this. So I will read that. As I traverse my journey, here is how I made it through. I first acknowledged my life was out of balance with my soul's purpose. I sat in silence and prayed for guidance. I journaled for 20 minutes. What was out of alignment? I created a vision board with images of what I wanted to bring into my life. I acknowledged who was toxic to my life and moved away from them. I acknowledged who added light to my life and brought them closer. Who will support me in the changes I wanted to make? Now I was ready to move forward with my new life. There is a reason, a very special reason you are here. Have you leaned in close to a mirror and stared into your eyes, stood naked in your full-length reflection and smiled? Spread your arms and thrown your head back to the sky. Do you love the strong curve of your back? It is good to know who you are without fear, without fences, without the rattle of human striving and misplaced desire. Life brings suffering. The root of survival is courage. Bend with the pain. See the light behind another person's cloud.
Well, I read that and it's so beautiful. It brings tears to my eyes. And let me just tell you, you're the light in my cloud today.
No, thank you so much.
You truly
Meghan.
are. Everything about you is magical. I thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. Listeners, you can find the book. Tell everyone where you can find the book and where they can connect with you.
Yes, so my website is deborahsantana.com, and there are links to purchasing the book through bookshop.org, Barnes & Noble, through Book Passage, where you'll receive a signed copy, because that's where my first event is going to be in Corte Madera, California, and then, of course, Amazon. And when you go to my website, you also can download the workbook, How to Walk Through Fire.
Well, I love it. And I just think it's so important, so needed right now. And thank you for all of your work that you do, all of your advocacy. Women need people like you. So keep using your voice. You have your platform and it's so needed and so important right now. Everyone, thank you for listening. If you're so inclined, head over to Apple or Spotify or wherever you're listening and leave me a quick review. I hate to be a pain, but I appreciate it. Keep going. You matter. Your story matters. Thanks, Deborah.
Thank you.
Judging Meghan with Meghan Judge.